And we are back, and it is time for our discussion point. Now, this is the main topic of the show, and at first, this was going to be a news story, um, but then I'm like, this is a little bit bigger. This is like something we could get a lot of stuff out of here, and then also the news of Alan Thicke passing away, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's definitely going in. Um, but our main discussion point is the Bryan Fuller has spoken on his quote unquote bittersweet departure from the new Star Trek TV series. He is now speaking on his the exit for the upcoming series. The article notes that Fuller is a longtime fan who got his big break in Hollywood on Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager. They tell Newsweek. He stepped down from his role as showrunner because he couldn't commit to the schedule laid out by CBS. Basically, they wanted him to focus solely on Star Trek Discovery, even though he's already doing another big sci-fi television series, American Gods. And so he said, there's a quote in here that he basically was like, I'm going to land this plane here first before taking off in another. And honestly, it is bittersweet because, this is sort of like J.J. Abrams directing Star Wars. He's a fan, but the only difference being, if Star Wars was his first thing he ever directed. But I mean, it's cool. It's cool to see, he is a big Star Trek fan. He got his big break because of Star Trek. It would have been cooler to see him come back to it. And I hope there's more that we could get coming up with him,
Well, I mean, my first comparison is thinking about Drew Goddard leaving Daredevil when he did. Yeah. Because you have that first season and you have someone who was such a big part of it who had to leave before it even came out and kept on as executive producer and is also going to be executive producer of the Defenders. But we had a show that when we saw it, we were all blown away. We're like, holy shit, how did they just pull off a Daredevil series on Netflix seemingly out of nowhere? And then this whole world is going to be built around it. And it holds up compared to the Marvel films, which are a completely different animal. But still, it's like this can easily stand behind that and that kind of quality, in some ways better. And if I was the guy who was in charge of that and then I couldn't stick around to see that through, to keep my name like as a primary on it, people should associate me with that show. It was my baby and now it's not my baby anymore. That's tough, and it's not to say that what Drew Goddard left for and what he did isn't equally important or as good. It's just like at that point in time, he had to make a decision. And I think that what's going on with Fuller is sort of the same kind of thing. Is like, one, I keep hearing things like Star Trek Discovery is still not really past the is it or isn't it phase. It's like they're casting people now, but the time that it was supposed to be premiering got pushed back. Like, it got announced it's getting pushed back very close to when it was supposed to be coming out. It's still that it's winding up on TV for the premiere, but then going to a subscription service that nobody is really using that subscription service yet. And we've seen no other reasons other than this show. So it seems like it would be very important to me as CBS to get the fucking show out that everybody is hinging the subscription service on. But in comparison, there's American Gods, which is probably not as much hanging on it, as far as it's not like a hugely well-known franchise. It's not a giant production because it's only 9 episodes or so a season, or 10 episodes a season. It's on a station that's already completely dedicated to it and has subscribers. And you're working with Neil Gaiman, which is to me a big deal, but maybe not as much to Fuller. But I look at those two situations, and where is my creative fulfillment going to come from more, and where am I going to feel like I'm not just a cog in a giant machine, like a big cog, but still a cog that I can do the parts that I need to do to make it the best, let it go when I need to let it go to go do other things that I can find creative fulfillment from, and not feel like I could just stay or go and not matter anyways, because I'm always going to have some corporate overlord over my shoulder.
Yeah, I mean that's where I think the big part of it is comes from, is if CBS didn't do the whole, or basically say, we don't want you working on other projects, like we want this here. And again, keeping in mind that they are basically setting this up for their CBS All Access digital and Netflix around the world, so they aren't in the time crunch of, oh, we need 22 episodes out. They can go, all right, a 10 episode season, start billing CBS All Access to be like a pay TV premier destination sort of thing. And then, but I mean, but so it seems like it does seem like it's more of a misstep for them than it does for him, because I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you want to finish this, you want to get this I mean, American Gods done and looking good, because there is a lot of people that are expecting, much like there's a lot of people expecting greatness out of this new Star Trek series, because like the article says, this is the first Star Trek TV show in 12 years that we've had since the last episode of Star Trek Enterprise came to a conclusion. And it's one of these things, like, yeah, it makes a big deal. And I think if they didn't do, if NBC didn't have the whole, well, we need to put, you need to either commit to us or commit to someone else, or commit to us or get the fuck out sort of thing, I don't think there would have been as many pushbacks.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is you got to look at Fuller's POV, which is he does weird.
Yep.
Yeah, he started out in Star Trek stuff and everything, and I'd be interested to kind of break down what episodes he did of those shows to kind of figure out what his storytelling cred is like on it. But he did Wonderfalls and Dead Like Me. He did Pushing Daisies, which is still one of those just terrific shows that unfortunately suffered from a corporate, not even a corporate thing, but like creative things that couldn't be helped with the writer's strike that happened in the midst of the second season being ready to start, and then not being able to do it. And so everybody, all the goodwill and stuff that was built up there for the first season dissipated.
Yeah.
He did Hannibal, a show that was really, it was a labor of love and never got high numbers, but he stuck it out and really worked hard at it to give the best story with great actors and great character stuff in the midst of a show that just should probably have never been on NBC. But to NBC's credit, they stuck it out. They gave everything they could on it and everything. Mm-hmm. So I really think that his creative juices seem to flow more towards American Gods than Star Trek. Star Trek may be the thing that he came back to, and it's an exciting thing to come in as the showrunner for. And it may be that he gives us a completely different version of Star Trek than we've ever seen before. I don't know if that necessarily works for Star Trek at this point. I think people need, that's what Next Generation did right, is Next Generation gave us all the feelings of classic Trek, and then we got to do stranger things with it with Deep Space Nine, and then Voyager was just bad.
Wait, who was the bald little girl in Deep Space Nine?
That would be the Ferengi.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's good points, and Didn't realize he did Dead Like Me. I really like that. And weren't they? Wasn't there something to them bringing it back or like a movie or something like that?
They've done some Dead Like Me movies. There was a Dead Like Me Life After Death movie that came out in 2009.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It does sound like it's a good choice, and I do like the fact that they said when they were casting, so they're working on casting right off the bat, because I guess they had ideas for characters, and so they wanted to get them cast, and that included an openly gay character and a female non-white lead for the show. And I'm like, yeah, whether Rod Roddenberry wants to say that it's, or whoever from the Roddenberry family wants to say that it doesn't. Well, actually, they're not saying about that. They're saying about John Cho playing his Sulu being gay or whatever. But it's one of these things that like it makes sense because it is a like Beatmaster says, look at our diversity. It's that's the one thing that I always applaud Star Trek for doing, and that was showing people that, hey, we are all, there's no white, black, like races out there. There's only one race, and that's essentially the human race. To borrow that from Battlestar Galactica as well. But so it's like I like seeing that. Oh yeah, we're gonna have this big push on diversity. It's like, yeah, of course, because I mean, if you had a whole bunch of white, good-looking people, it's like, why isn't this on the CW? Because that's where it looks like you're marketing at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's when things are said like, oh, we're gonna have a gay character, we're gonna have this character and everything else like that. All it is announcing something that doesn't need to be announced because it gets introduced in the story. It's nice because it shows an inclusiveness, and at this point in time, I think that it's important to show inclusiveness because a lot of people still don't seem to get that. But at some point, it's nice to just let yourself be surprised. You get pulled in, and you're like, oh, who's this character? I want to find out about them. I don't need to know who they were being told to me. I want to be introduced to them and follow them on their journey and learn about them in the context of the show.
Yeah.
That's I mean, it's sort of the same feeling of people who don't want to see trailers for the new Star Wars. It's like, and I think Adam Driver said something today, like there shouldn't be a trailer for episode 8. You should just go and see it because be surprised. And I kind of agree with that. In theory,
Yeah.
I agree with it. We're just, it's funny. The problem is not the trailers themselves that they exist. The problem is what the trailers do.
Yep.
That constantly basically give too much of the stuff away. And we've treated consumers of films. Did I break off?
No, you go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. We've treated consumers of films and TV and things like they're stupid. Like they can't not know what the story is before they get there. It's like you're gonna come in and it's a safety room here. Like you feel safe because this is exactly what we're gonna tell you, and this is how we're gonna tell you about it and everything. And it's like that's not what storytelling is. That's not exciting. That's not interesting. That's why I'm so blown away by Westworld, is that fucking Westworld blew my mind week after week. It was just, it didn't announce me what was coming up. Yeah, they showed previews for the next week, but it wasn't even like those previews told you much. And it wasn't also like where they tried to do like, oh, we're going to outsmart you. We're going to show you a scene, but out of context, you think it's about one thing, but it's actually about something else. They didn't do any of that shit. They just showed you, hey, there's going to be another show next week. You should come fucking watch it. Yeah, I will watch it. So just real fast then, let's back up for a second. So we're losing Fuller. Is there anybody that you see as who's the choice to come in to take over?
Well, they already announced that that Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts are doing it. Are going to be taking over, his spot there as, showrunner. Which makes sense. I mean, it's not like I don't see that being one of the big reasons why there was a, like for a layback or pushback of the time, because of the fact that they already had the people there. So I mean, and I think Beats pointing out that Kurtzman still might be on the job as well. I'm not 100%, but I mean, it would make sense if Kurtzman was still a part of it too. But I mean, I don't know. I think you'd be good there. Um, and Evan's asking, what about Brandon Braga or Ronald D. Moore? Ronald D. Moore is busy doing something else too, I believe. He's quite busy himself. So,
But that's the question: is what happens when Star Trek calls? You know that
yeah,
that's the thing. Is like it's not like, oh, we're running this new show, and it's developed. We're gonna do this new sitcom. It's from the people who made Cheers, and we want you to come in and help showrun it or something like that. It's like, okay, that's cool, but it's not Cheers itself. It's a property from like Lynn Charles or whatever else. Hey, fucking Star Wars movie. Do you want to direct a Star Wars movie? Shit, yes, I want to direct a Star Wars movie. Are you working on anything right now? Well, yeah, I was doing the fucking autobiography of my entire fucking life, but I can put that shit on hold because now I got the big finish. I worked in a Star Wars movie. I just there's some properties that it's the buy-in. It's the buy-in of whether or not you can handle it. Like we know that Joss Whedon hit his wall with Marvel, like he did the Avengers movies, and he's like, that's great. Now I feel like I've done the giant ass superhero movie that I wanted to make, and then I did another one, but I kind of want to control my own destiny again. Or your Ant-Man. Who was doing Ant-Man?
Edgar Wright.
Yeah, Edgar Wright. You're Edgar Wright, and you're like, oh, I want to do an Ant-Man movie. I think it'd be fucking fun. I could have a great time with this. Oh, well, dude, we need to tell you how everything's going to have to work with the rest of the Marvel Universe. Well, that sucks a lot of balls. I'm going to step away now and go do something that I can control or, make people not like Scott Pilgrim, even though that movie was fucking awesome. It's like, shit, man, we fucking had an opportunity to make a Marvel film. But if you're the dude who makes the Marvel film, you have to be excited by it. And if you're not excited by it, then that fucks that shit up for everybody. So in this case, it's like, yeah, maybe I'm the guy who gets the call about Star Trek, and I'm like, I don't give a shit about Star Trek, which could also be the best thing that could happen to the show. If you're the person who doesn't give a shit about Star Trek, then you don't come in there with any of those preconceptions of like, oh, well, this is how a Vulcan's got to be, and you got to fucking Romulan say this shit, but fucking Vulcan say this shit, like white people, black people, because I think it's funny. You ever notice that a Vulcan walks in with his ass like, but my point is, it can be good to introduce people who aren't part of that fandom already, because they're not beholden to it. At the same time, you need to have someone with at least some respect for what it is.
Yeah.
It's a fine line to walk, and it's tough, and that's why these big franchise things are so interesting to me and such a pain in the ass to try to enjoy sometimes, because you have somebody who comes in like J.J. Abrams is like, I'm gonna fuck up Trek. I'm gonna fuck up Trek real bad and make it into action movies and stuff. But Trek needs to get fucked up because the last couple of movies that you had didn't do very well because it was so much like the shit that came before. Someone needs to inject it with new life. And so Abram comes in and injects it with new life. And then he says, hey, that worked out really good. I'm going to make another one. And I know everybody liked Wrath of Khan, right? Y'all like Wrath of Khan? Yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna fuck up Wrath of Khan. No, dude. Wrath of Khan is like on a pedestal way the fuck up here. And you ain't reaching that pedestal. We'll take your fucking Trek action movie. That's fine. That's all cool and shit. Leave Khan the fuck alone, dude. And so no one said to him, you should probably not do the fucking Wrath of Khan, all right? Just let Khans lie where they lie. So it fucked up. And he knows it fucked up. He said it fucked up.
Yeah.
The guy admits it. He's a cool dude. I appreciate him. He comes into Star Wars. He's like, hey, I'm going to do Star Wars. And they're like, you better not fucking use Wrath of Khan. And fucking Chaka Khan that shit first. So he's like,
Khan out of our... keep your Hans off our cons? What?
Hans versus Cons. It's a sexy time. So he comes in and he's like, I'm gonna do Star Wars and I'm gonna make Star Wars really respectful, like, and maybe it'll feel a lot like the Star Wars that you knew before. But again, maybe we need Star Wars to feel like it felt like before. So let's just take a break, let that shit happen, and
Everyone, be cool. Be cool.
yeah, don't move too fast. You'll startle the motherfuckers, and then they'll go running around and trip over the lightsabers and shit. So he just like he did it right. He did it respectfully, and that's the thing. You have to have someone who respects it, but then some. You have to know what it is before you can break it, because you have to break it in just the right places. And I think that's the question with the Star Trek thing is like, can Star Trek the show, does it need to be beholden to Star Trek from before? I think in some ways it does, because it's our first Star Trek show in 20 years. But then it also has to learn how to be its own thing too. And that's someone has to come in that can do both those things.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a great place to end.